All right, let's say you wanted a minimalist watch, but you wanted a good minimalist watch. You did a little bit of research and you discovered you don't want like an MVMT or a Daniel Wellington or one of these really popular fashion watches that are out there right now. You wanted something with a little bit of quality and heritage behind it, and you were willing to pay a little bit more of a premium to get an actually good watch. In that case, you might be interested in today's watch, which we're taking a look at the Lilienthal Berlin Zeitgeist. Let's check it out. Hey everybody, this is Dave. Welcome back to Just the Watch. And as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be taking a look at a watch from Lilienthal Berlin, which is called the Zeitgeist. As you might assume from the name, Lilienthal Berlin is based out of Berlin. So this is a German, I guess it's a micro brand. They're fairly new to the scene, and they're putting out some really nice watches that do come at a little bit of a premium compared to some of the other things that we typically look at. And we'll leave it up to you guys to see if you think that it's going to be worth it. I also want to make sure I let you guys know that Lilienthal Berlin did reach out to me and offer to send me this watch for free for the purposes of review. So this is a watch that I received and I do get to keep and don't have to send back. So much thanks to Lilienthal Berlin for that and for the watch that we can do this review for. The Zeitgeist, which we're looking at today, features premium components, great German manufacturing and assembly, great Bauhaus-inspired design, and a Swiss Selita SW200 movement on the inside of it. And the design of the watch overall has a lot of interesting uses, not just like a cookie cutter, bare bones, minimalist watch that is minimal in the sense that there's nothing there. There's a lot of thought put into this, and yet it still has the amazing versatility and the classiness that comes with great minimalist watches. So let's go ahead and jump into taking a look at the Zeitgeist and start by looking at the specifications and dimensions on the watch. The watch is 42.5 millimeters in diameter, has 20 millimeter lugs, about 50 millimeter lug to lug, and it's only 10 millimeters thick, so nice and thin there. The band is also really great. It's German-made vegetable tanned leather that just has a real suppleness to it that I really like. You're getting a sapphire crystal and 50 meters of water resistance. And all of this is going to come in at a price tag of 599 euros, which is a little bit over 550 USD. So we'll talk more about the price as we go on, but I think that's a fair price basically for what you're getting here. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that I really like about this watch and look at the details, because there's a lot of interesting details that they packed into this. So we start by taking a look at the watch from a little bit of a broad overview. You can see it's got a very minimalist look. It seems very simple at first and really has that kind of Bauhaus inspiration, which makes sense. This is a brand that has its, that is based in Germany. The watch is made in Germany, so if anybody is going to do a Bauhaus watch, it would be a German company like Lilienthal Berlin. And this simplicity makes it extremely versatile. It's the kind of watch that you can wear with almost anything, and I think that's one of the reasons why these watches, these minimalist style watches, are so popular. And yet, despite its simplicity, there's a lot of kind of interesting little details there and a lot going on that kind of really gives it some character. So let's talk about some of those details. First one, and the one that stood out the most to me, was the crown. So as you can see from this angle, you can't really see the crown, but it's there and it's a fairly good size. And I think that is a really cool design. That's very unique. You don't see it very often. The way the crown just tucks away like that. If you need to use it to set the time, you can pull it out. The Selita SW200 movement does hack and hand wind. And adjusting the time actually isn't that hard. Even though it only pops out a little bit, you can get enough of a grip on it. So it's kind of cool to have a watch like that where the crown is almost completely invisible. And that really helps with the wearability as well, because even though this is a 42.5 millimeter diameter, there's basically no crown, so it actually kind of wears a little bit smaller than you would normally expect, because normally you're going to have another couple millimeters for this crown sticking out, but that is not there. Now the obvious drawback to this is that it makes it incredibly difficult to hand wind. They say in their manual that you're supposed to be able to just kind of rub your finger along it like this, and when the watch is completely run out, you can kind of get a little bit of a grip on it and get just a little bit of winding in, and after some time it'll get the watch going. But for me, I found it was just far easier to just kind of do the Seiko shuffle at this point, which is kind of a bummer, because if you have a watch like the Selita, or if you have a movement like the Selita SW200 inside that has hand winding, you kind of want to be able to use that feature. Speaking of the movement, let's take a quick look at the case back, and you can see that it has a nice display case back, and they've done a really cool job with this sort of black custom rotor, which, you know, it's kind of a real industrial look, and it's the sort of thing that I think would look out of place if you saw it on the front of the watch, but putting it on the back, I think you can get away with it. The Selita SW200 is a really cool movement. It's high beat, so you get a really nice smooth sweep of the second hand, and it's fairly accurate. I've been getting about plus 15 seconds a day in my wearing testing, but I'm sure, you know, if you did some regulation, or, you know, some people might get better than that. But yeah, pretty nice for that. And it is Swiss made, so it's a German made watch with a Swiss made movement inside. And they are really proud of their German heritage and the German design and manufacturing. So the design of the watch, you can see some of the design inspirations. The numbers on it, the font that they use is apparently the same font that they use on street signs in Berlin, which must make it a pretty cool place, because that's a nice font that they've got there. Then also the crown, as you can see, it's not perfectly round. It's got some angles on it, and that's supposed to look like the world clock that they have in Berlin. That's like a famous icon there, so it's supposed to remind you of that. They've done a nice sweeping blue second hand, which extends all the way to the edge of the dial, which just works great with that smooth sweeping 28,000 beats per hour high beat movement that they have in there. And then they have matching stitching on the leather band that the watch comes on. On the dial of the watch is kind of interesting. So it's a galvanized dial. So I had to look it up. But galvanization is a process where they put a zinc coating over a metal plate that's supposed to make it rust proof, but it gives it a really interesting finish. It's kind of got little speckles of color in there. It's sort of a slightly bronzed color. It's not, you know, maybe like a cream, but more metallic. It's a really interesting color, and I think that's really cool. And then what they've done on the dial is they put this little grooved circle in the middle of it that the hour hand just exactly goes out and touches. So it's kind of a really cool way to tie the design in together. And that groove does add a lot of characters, and it's along that circle on the inside that they've put their logo. They've put the 6 o'clock date, and then a very small writing, like extremely small fine printing. You have the name of the watch, the Zeitgeist, and then Automatic over here. So yeah, so kind of interesting little details there. The case finishing is also really cool. Typically you're going to find either polished or brushing, but in this case it's a fully sandblasted case, which gives it a very matte finish. And depending on the lighting, it kind of looks sort of like a dull gray in a lot of lighting, but in other lighting it sort of almost has a little bit of a slight gold or bronze tone to it too. Again, just a little bit of, I feel like a little bit more color is added in there somehow. So it's really interesting. It goes really well with the dial. That color really extends all the way around the watch, including the handset. The handset is, you know, very similar finishing to the rest of the watch, which gives it a very nice uniform appearance. However, you are getting not a lot of contrast between the hands and the dial. So that's something that, you know, some people might not be too excited about. You might, you know, it might be better if you get more contrast between the hands and dial to make it a little bit more legible. The lugs are really great shape. They're kind of really slender and delicate, but they look very sleek and just, you know, match the case great. But what I like most about them is just the curvature to them. So you get a really nice curvature to the lugs there that really helps the watch wear very nicely. It's extremely comfortable on the wrist, and yeah, I think that, you know, great lug design is what plays a large part in that. It's also interesting that they went with a 20 millimeter lug width. To me, that looks a little bit on the narrow side, but yeah, it just kind of gives the watch a really unique look. You know, proportionally, I think you would typically see 22 millimeter, but choosing a narrower band in this case, yeah, just gives it an interesting look that I think actually works really well with this. Finally, you are getting some lume on the hands, which isn't bad actually. So, always whenever you're getting lume on a dress style watch, it's kind of a bonus. In this case, that white lume in the middle kind of gives you a little bit of more extra contrast against the dial and helps the hand stand out more. But it does also make it functional in the dark for a fairly reasonable amount of time. There is no lume on any of the markers, so you're only getting the hands lume. And yeah, you can see that. Yeah, it's a nice, cool. I think it's BGW9, so a nice blue glow to it. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and the cons of the Zeitgeist. Starting with the pros, I think one of the things that I like the most about this watch is its versatility. I was able to wear it with almost anything, and it just always looked great. It's the kind of thing that because the design is so simple and so universal, it doesn't look too out of place if you're walking around in athletic wear, and it doesn't look too out of place if you have to put on a suit. Obviously there are better specific case watches in either of those situations, but if you're looking for like one good all-around watch that you want to put a little bit of extra money into and be able to wear it in all situations, this is a really good option for you, I think. Along those lines, it has the specifications that you would need to make a great daily watch. You're getting a great movement with the Selita SW200 inside, so something that will last you a long time, that shouldn't need a lot of maintenance, and yet is just a really solid, accurate movement. You're getting 50 meters of water resistance, which should be plenty for your daily activities, unless you are a swimmer or someone who's in the water a lot. And that sapphire crystal is always great for keeping the watch looking good. Another thing that I really like about the watch is its comfort. It's one of the most comfortable watches that I've worn. It just feels great on the wrist. It sits really nicely and comfortably and almost goes unnoticed until you have to check the time and look at it. So just a really comfortable watch there, the kind of thing you can wear all day without any problems. Part of that could be because of the leather band, which is one of the best genuine leather bands I've seen. They do have it listed as genuine leather, so they don't say that it's top grain or full grain or anything like that, but I don't know exactly what the terminology standards are in Germany, so it could be a higher quality leather than you would typically expect with genuine leather. It certainly feels that way, but either way, they do say that it is a vegetable tan leather that is made in small batches in Germany. So really, really great work with the strap on this one. And then the style is cool. There's a lot of interesting touches, particularly if you have some interest in Berlin and that, European atmosphere appeals to you. There's a lot of little nods there that, again, I think it's cool that they put, a lot of thought into the design. And the watch has won a number of different design awards from pretty prestigious ones. I'm not a design guy, so that doesn't factor in too much to me. I just like the way it looks. But if you are someone who has an appreciation of design, you might get more out of the watch than even I do. Okay, so moving on to the cons and some of the drawbacks of the watch. The first one I think is the crown. Now the crown of the watch, it's cool. Okay, it's like a really cool idea to have the crown recessed like that so that it's out of the way so that you don't see it. It really gives it a unique visual look that really makes it different and stand out from a lot of watches out there. But for an automatic movement, it's really a pain to use. The hand winding, it has a hand winding feature. The Selita SW200 has a hand winding feature in it, but you can't really use it. I mean, it got to the point that I would spend so much time just trying to get enough juice into the thing to get it started that I would give up and start doing the the Seiko shuffle like it was a Seiko 5 or something, a movement that didn't have hand winding. And for the most part, it's almost easier just to do that to get the watch started than to even bother with the hand winding. Now, I think the reason that this happened is because they originally started making quartz pieces, and the watch functions great once you pull the crown out to set the time. You can get enough grip on it. There's no struggles or any troubles with setting the time or the date. And with a quartz watch, you never have to worry about hand winding it anyways, so it makes perfect sense there. But they kind of took that same design when they did their first automatic, and to me, I think that it's kind of a big drawback for me. Another con is that there's not a lot of contrast in the hands and the dial, so it does make it a little bit difficult to pick them out. I never actually had any trouble reading the watch, but there were times where I had to stare a little bit longer than I would have with other watches. And if you like a really crisp, high contrast design, this watch does not have that. Some people are going to complain about the size. This is what you would probably consider a dress watch, and 42.5 millimeters is a much more modern, larger size, and I know that a lot of you guys prefer the smaller, traditional sizes. To me, I don't think it's much of a big deal. It's just down to personal preference. To me, the watch didn't look huge or large. I have a 7.5-inch wrist. It was fine with me on that, even if I was dressing up and wearing it with a suit. It is larger than I prefer for a dress watch, but it didn't really bother me that much. I understand what they're going for there, and I think a lot of people prefer the larger sizes. So if you want the extra wrist presence, this is going to give it to you. If you get really annoyed with large dress watches, then this is, again, maybe something you're going to want to pass on. And the final con is the cost. If you're looking for a good dress watch, there's a lot of competition in this like $500, $550 price range. You can get some great watches from Tissot, from Seiko and the Presage line, so a lot of options out there. But I don't think that this watch is overpriced. It's just, a lot of competition in this price range, particularly from somewhat of an unknown brand. But I don't think that the watch is overpriced and by any means. I think you're definitely getting your money's worth with what they're packing in here. Both quality and component and style and design and everything about it is really top notch. So I wouldn't worry about that, but I would check around and look at what your other options are because, there's a lot of good options in this price range. So that'll wrap it up. Let me know what you guys think of the Lilienthal Berlin Zeitgeist. There'll be links down below, as always, to check out the watch and purchase it on their website if you're interested. Thank you guys for watching. Drop me a comment. Let me know what your favorite minimalist watch is, particularly because the March Watch of the Month category is going to be minimalist watches. And we'll be looking at the top 10 minimalist watches under $200 a little bit later on this month. So this kind of fits into the theme. We're kind of warming up into it. We'll probably be hitting a lot of minimalist watches this month. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.